Alright, so in this video I'm going to try to show you how we can schedule some automated emails to go out whenever you want them to go out. Maybe you want this to go out every week or every day or every month at a certain time, whatever the case is going to be. And while we're doing that, we'll also see how we can incorporate some HTML tables into our emails. So the first thing I need to do, as usual, open the script editor. This is our new V8 engine. Dismiss the message. Go ahead and name this project. I'm going to start by creating the actual HTML for this email. So I'll go under File, New HTML. I'll call this file Email. I'm going to try to make our email closer to this, but I'm not going to go too crazy matching every single detail. I kind of hate doing design, but if you want to be more detailed about it, be my guest. For me, I'll just do a little div in here. And this will be pretty much the container outside, just to have a container. I'm probably not even going to use that div, but I'll have that anyways. Now inside of this, I'm going to create a div 1, and actually I'm going to do 2 right below that as well. And the reason I'm doing 2 here is because I want this first one here to act as this, whatever this colored line is on top, and the second one is going to be this entire box. So now inside of this second box, I'm going to need to put this current inventory text, which will go inside of this second box right here, and I'll call that an H1. Now I'm just gonna type my inventory, because what I want to happen in the end of the day, I want this to be replaced with whatever text is here in our spreadsheet. So I'll just type something a little different so we can see the difference as we go through this. Right below that H1, we need that little red thing, whatever that is. So I'll just do another div for this. And I'll do send on someday. So again, that should be replaced with this. Go below. So below that, we're going to need to place this table. Now, before I do that table, I'll do another div here just in case. Keep it empty for now. Now I need this table, so let's create that. Now in this table, we're going to have this section for our table headers. So I'll just start with something like t-head, just in case we need something like that. And in this, we'll do a row. And in this row, we're going to do the columns. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 columns there. And I need to repeat that for every single column. You could put this on different lines. Because we only have 4 columns, I kind of prefer it this way. That's fine. So that's the top section of our table, which is this. Now we need to take care of these lines. So let's start by, I'm just going to copy and paste this because it's going to be easier to change that up. So this is going to be T body. And we're going to have a row, and each row is going to have our table data cells, so TDs. And I'm not going to do it for all of these 3. I'm just going to do it for one of them. So just that. So finally, below all of this, we're going to need this thing, the total line. So that will be the footer section of our table. And this should be that total. And then this should be empty, and this should be empty. And this one is that total, whatever that number was in here. So this I didn't spell right. Let's correct that. So there's our table. Do we have anything else? That's pretty much it for our HTML, I suppose. We're gonna have to do some styling here, but we're gonna worry about that later. So with this, let's try to go to our code side and see how we're gonna make all of this values go to this table. So I'll go to my code side. In here, let's just connect to our spreadsheet. So we're gonna get our active spreadsheet and store it in this variable. Now let's get the worksheet here called invoice. So we're gonna get that worksheet by the name of it, and the name of that worksheet is invoice. Now in this worksheet, some things are gonna be static, meaning they're always gonna be in the same place. So like this current inventory is gonna be in this cell, this is gonna be in this cell. Now this headers are gonna be in that same place. Now these items though are probably gonna shift up and down because we may add more items or remove some items, which means this total as well is gonna shift up and down. So up to this line 6, it's gonna be pretty much the same position for all of that. So let's just try to get all the stuff that's gonna be in the same place. So for example, like this is B3 cell. So let's get the value in that. So again, we're gonna go to this worksheet, invoice, get the range B3 and get the value in that range. So B3 was this cell. Similarly, I'm gonna do it for this. So I believe that was B4. Then we need description, quantity, unit price, total value. Now I could read each one individually, but instead I'm just gonna read this entire range and just get parts out of it. So the range is from B6 through E6. And this time is gonna be get values because, well, it's not a single cell, it's a range. And now out of this, let's just separate all the columns that we need. So I'm doing headers 0. Actually, this should be 0, 0 because it's the first row. It's gonna come as a row out of this range. So we need 0, 0. So that means the first row, which is just gonna be one row anyways, but it's not gonna know about that. And in the first row, I need the first column, which is again 0. So that's coming out of this array of headers. And similarly, this is the first column, this is the second column, this is the third column, this is the fourth column from that array, which are these values here. So that's it for the easy part. We got all the static values. Now we need to get all of these values. Now for that, we have to first figure out how far down we have to go from this B7 and E7 range. So I'm gonna do that by first finding the last row here, which is gonna be this row 10. And by that, I'm gonna know to go one less to go to the last one. So we'll find the last row by taking the worksheet and doing get last row. So this last row will be the row for the total. The one before that will be the last item. So with that, our range is gonna go starting from this B7. So let's go get the range. So it's row 7, column B. So 7 and second column for column B. And then we have to provide the number of rows. And the way we can find how many rows we need to do, it's gonna be if this is 10, which is our last row, then to get to this one, we should basically do 9. But it's not going to be 9. We need to get the number of rows we need to go down, not the number of the row we need, but number of rows that are in this range, which is going to be 3. So to get to that 3, what we're going to do, we're going to take this 10 and do minus the 7, which is the first line in this. So if we do 10 minus 7, that will get us the 3, which is going to be the number of lines in this. And we're going to do that by taking this LR, which is going to be that 10 minus 7. And finally, we need number of columns. So number of columns in here is 1, 2, 3, 4. And we'll get values out of that table. So that should get us to our table range dynamically. And finally, we need to get this total stuff. So this and this. So I'll read the range again. And this time we're not going to use this notation. We'll just use numbers. So we need to get starting from the last row. In that last row, we're going to start from column 2, which is basically this B10. And then we need to get 1 row and 4 columns and get values. And then out of this total line, we're going to need the text from here and text from here. And that's similar to how we got this. And this is going to be in column number 4, which with 0 index becomes 3. 0, 1, 2, 3. So I think that gets us all the variables from the spreadsheet we need to work with. So now we need to worry about basically placing all this in this HTML template. And for that, we're going to use HTML service. So let's just create a variable for it. And the file name is going to be this email. Now to that email, we need to pass some variables. So we can do that by taking this object now and assigning some additional properties to this. And those properties are going to be basically all this information we need to send to that email. So I'm going to start with that h1. And that h1 is going to be this h1 value that we have here. We need to repeat this for pretty much all the other variables that we need to send over there. So the last one I'm going to do is the actual data. And if you remember, we got this table range values, which is going to be basically this entire array. So I'm just going to send it over to my template site. Now, once we're able to send all of this over to our email site, we should be able to access all these variables in here. So I'm going to go here and use brackets like this. That's a way for us to access and print a variable with this equal sign in here. So if we wanted just to run JavaScript, we wouldn't do this equal sign, but since I want to print that in here, I have to do this equal sign as well. So here I need to print this h1 that I'm passing in here. And for most of the stuff, it's going to be very similar. So like this one, for example. So I think I got all of those. Now I'm going to skip this part for the time being and move to this end total part, which is going to be easy again. Before we get to this, let's try to just get this on this side and try to send this email to see what happens. So to do that, I'm going to take this HTML template and evaluate that. And then we need to get the actual email text. So we can do that by using this get content. And we'll save this into a new variable. And this should contain all our HTML text right now. We should be able to log this out and see that if necessary, which I should probably do. I'm also going to go with the step of sending the email out. So there are a couple of ways you can send your emails out. You can either use Mail app, which is going to be very similar. You can pretty much replace Mail app with what I'm going to use. You're going to get the same results. I'm going to use Gmail app because I find I can actually get better results out of that with timing of emails and everything. So with Gmail app, we should be able to use this method send email, which, as you can see, has the person who's going to receive this email. I'm just going to send it to myself. So by the way, to all the people who sent emails to this email, that email is not being read. So I'm going to go ahead and do the title line now, the subject for this email. And finally, we need the body. Now, this body only accepts regular text bodies, so that's not going to accept our HTML stuff. So here, you usually just type what they would receive if there's no HTML support. You could also just build the text for whatever text you're going to send them in that case. I'm just going to keep this simple. Something like this. Let me send all of these to a separate line. And then finally, the interesting part here, we need to set an object with our HTML body, which is going to be the actual HTML body with build on top here. Just like that. So with all of this set, let's try to run this and see what happens so far. So that's this function called myFunction. We should probably rename that, but it's good enough for me. It's called myFunction. I'm going to go ahead and run this. All the permission stuff is going to come up, so we have to do that. So that went through. I didn't get any errors. Let's go and check our email. So here we are. This was sent. See, it says your monthly report. So if I open this email, let me zoom in a little bit. That's pretty much what we got. So it's not nicely formatted or anything, but you can already see we got all those column names. We got our total, which is not formatted very well. But other than that, we got this, which was again coming from here. Now, we don't have this part because we didn't do the actual lines, which is what we're going to work on now. Now, we probably don't have to send our emails all the time. We should be able to also view that log. See, remember, because I did this console log to see the actual HTML body, which is this. So it shows the actual HTML with all the replacements that were done using our script. So now let's go and figure out how we're going to fix this part. So first, I don't want this to send emails for now, so I'm just going to comment this block and we'll work on this top part. So now I have to work on this part where we did this one, table range values, and that was sent to our HTML template. Again, that's going to be an array. I'm going to go back to my HTML side in here. And what we'll do, we'll create a little loop in here. So I think we should be able to use for each loop. That should be fine. We'll try that and see what happens. So the variable was called table range values. So now what I can do, I can open these brackets. And this time I'm not doing that equal sign because here I'm not printing out anything yet. So I'm just going to take that variable and do for each on that. And this should be uppercase E. JavaScript is case sensitive language, so be careful. assuming that V8 engine works on this part as well, we should be able to just do an arrow function. And in this arrow function, we're going to do what we're going to do in this curly brackets. Now within that curly brackets, I want to be able to just print out all these lines. Now the thing with that is that I need to break back to HTML. So that means what I need to do, I need to just close this brackets in here and then reopen them like this. And I'm just going to go back here and just do a couple of lines. So basically this is my for each loop. It starts here and it ends in here. And in the middle, because now we break out of that JavaScript thing, we should be able to put our HTML. Now, I've just realized that each line is going to be a row, so our HTML is not going to only include columns, it also includes this row thing. So we should place that in this loop. Okay, now in this loop, we should have access to this R variable, which is basically the variable that's going to be the row. And in that row, basically the first column is going to be the position 0, second column position 1, etc. And I need to use again this brackets to print things out. And I'm going to do it right here. And instead of doing this, we'll take that R and do 0, which will indicate the first column in that row. And then I'm going to repeat this for every other column, but we're going to change the column number. And again, in arrays, counts start from 0. So this is the first column, second, third, fourth, which is pretty much our columns here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, now let's try to run this and see what we get. So I'm going to go to my code, run it, and look at the log. So this is that part. This is our quantities. Now let's look at this. Here we go. See, we got like item 1, which is the totals coming from here. And then we got the next row. It's not formatted very nicely, but it doesn't really matter. And we got the third row, which is basically this. So that's good. We actually got all the lines we needed out of that particular table. Now, the only thing is that all these numbers are not formatted in a very nice way. So we could format all those numbers in JavaScript, but I think we could just get around this by, instead of doing get values for this, we'll just use this other method here. So let's try that and see what happens. And I'm going to do get display values, which basically means the actual thing that you can visually see in there. So let's just save this and run the same code to see what happens. Hey, look at that. Now we got all the formatting of our numbers in here. That looks much better. Now we probably also need that formatting. Well, not for this. That looks pretty good. But we need that formatting for this part as well. See this total number? So I'm going to do that for that total. That total was the total sum. And we got that total sum from this total line, this one. So that means I'm going to change this to get display values as well. Let's just run this and see what happens. Here we go. We got our formatting. That looks good. So the numbers are formatted well now. That's good. Now we need to probably make our email a little nicer looking. So let's go back to our HTML and try to do a little bit of CSS. So one thing I want to do kind of this line on top. That line is going to be for me this div. And because we're dealing with emails, I'm going to do some inline styles here. You definitely don't want to do this if you're actually creating some other HTML. We'll set a height. That's good enough for that. And then I need this current inventory thing. So this is the way it looked like. We need that a lot bigger and different color. So that's this. I'm just gonna copy and paste this thing. And instead of background color, that will be color, because that's the text color. And we don't need the height, but we need font size. And I'm not sure what that font size is gonna be, but I'll just do something. Again, I'm not gonna match exactly all the sizes and everything. I just want to have something that illustrates how this is gonna work. So that's the font size for that. We need the font and the color for this thing. So let's do that. So the color for this was whatever that is. So for this, I'm just gonna do pink. If you want to match color, you can do a hex color here. So just open Photoshop or whatever else you use and get a hex color and use it in here. So this would basically just look like something like that. I'm gonna just keep this. And we'll also make this bold. We can do that using font weight property in CSS. So all of this is CSS. So if you want to learn more about this, you have to learn about CSS. I want to use this line to space these things down a little bit. I'm going to use margin bottom for that. All right, let's get to our table headings here. So instead of doing every single heading, maybe I can just pass the color to the entire TR, the whole row. So something like that. All right, let's see what else we got here. We have this part. I'm going to skip this part for the time being. Let's do this. So that's this thing. Okay. So now we need like this stuff. So you can see how this is like we have this grayish color, and then we have this other a little less gray, but it's still some shading. And then the next one is kind of darker. So we're going to have to, I guess, take care of that. And we're going to do that in this loop. And the way we'll do that in this for each loop, we can actually pass two parameters, row and the index. And the way it's going to work is that this is still going to be this row, but this index is going to be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 for each line. And basically we have to figure out, is it one of the lines we need to color or not? So the first one we want to color, that's 0. Then 1 we don't want to color. Then 2 we need to color, something like that. So it's going to be pretty much 0 needs to be colored, 2, 4, something like this. And the way we can figure that out, let's just open this in this window. So if we get something like 0, 1, etc. If I take that and do a modulus, that means basically getting the remainder of 2. See what happens is that for 0 it's 0, for 1 it's 1, then 0, 1, 0, 1. So we get this 0, 1 thing that's going to happen. So we can check if it's 0, then it's going to be one color. If it's 1, it's going to be a different color. And we're going to do this using this modulus thing. Now we have to do it in JavaScript though, not in here in our spreadsheet. So right here, I'm going to just hit enter to continue with a little bit extra JavaScript. And I'm going to define a color pretty much right here. And I'm going to do an if statement here. I'm going to say if we take that modulus of I, so this is how you do the modulus in JavaScript by using this percentage. So I remainder of 2. So if that equals 0, and we can do triple equals here. Then I want the color to be equal to gray. I'm going to just keep this all in one line. Else, I'm going to make the color equal to light gray. Now we could have done this with a little more prettier code, but I'm just going to keep it with this. This is good enough. And the way we can use that, now we can use that variable later in our code. So we want this row to be styled differently. So I'm just going to copy something that gives us background color. I don't need the height right now. And here where we have to do the color, we're going to again print our variable. Instead of that purple, I'll just do that variable color that we've just created in here. Keeping everything else the same. Let's save this. Try this again. No errors. Good sign. Let's go check our email. There's our new email. Let's look at that. There we go. We got our varying color pattern here using our JavaScript now. Too dark, but again, I'm not matching colors. You can go back and match colors if you want. I'm just going to add maybe a little padding to each one of these lines just to space these things out a little bit. And maybe also remove this spacing within the cells that creates this white line. So let's go to our table and do the border spacing on the table. Something like this. Now you might also want to align these things to the right and the left. So that's all gonna be in here. So where was that aligned? Oh, that was to the left. The rest we want to the right, right? Something like that. So I'll just go here. Do a little padding for that too. I'll repeat this for all of the rest. Something like that. So hopefully that gives you an idea. So I'm going to just run this one more time. Whatever it is, it is. So now those lines disappeared. These are aligned a little better. We have a little nicer padding, etc. So now you can play around with this to make it look exactly the same. But overall, we demonstrated what we need to do to make this happen from that spreadsheet. Now, just to test this out, let's just go back and add another item to our spreadsheet to make sure that it's actually going to work out. So as you can see, it works just fine. We got our numbers, we got our background colors, looks okay. So finally, let's get to scheduling this email to go out. So for that, we're going to go on top here, rename this function to something better. We don't really have to do this, but you should. So that's the name of this function. I'm going to save this. Now I'll go to File, actually Edit, and find Current Project Triggers. And that gets us to this screen. And as you can see, there are currently no triggers. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to just click on this Add Trigger. And then now it already picked up that function, but if you had multiple functions in that script editor, you would have to select the right one, which is this thing. And finally, we want to change the event source as time-driven. And make sure we choose when we want this to be sent out. So if I go here, see, I can run it on a specific date or time, or maybe I want this every week or every month. So I'm going to go with this. And now we're going to choose the date. So the 5th of each month. Okay? And if you want to get notifications of errors, if something goes wrong with this code, you can do notify me immediately or daily, whichever one you want to do. So tons of different ways. And finally, you could probably set up the time too. So let's say we want this to go out 9 to 10 a.m. on that day. And at that point, you just hit save and you're done. So that should have now time-based scheduled emails going out every month on that particular day with that setup we just did. And if you wanted to remove this at some point, just come back to the same place, open this, and delete the trigger, which is what I'm going to do right now. And that's pretty much all I wanted to cover in this video. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.